Hello everyone, and welcome to our program reviewing the 2010 session of the Missouri General Assembly. And with us to discuss the various issues that were passed and not passed during the session is Mike Reed, our Associate Executive Director for Advocacy and our Chief Lobbyist here at MSBA. And Mike, thanks for being with us.
Well, it's always enjoyable. It's very enjoyable that the session is over with. It was an interesting session, very combative at times and very uncombative at times. It was a strange session this year.
The dominant issue, of course, Mike, was the budget. Tell us about where we ended up on the budget for the next fiscal year.
Well, the budget was the dominant issue because we have no money and we had to do some reduction. The budget got passed, as we discussed a while back, a week early. But with the budget, we are flat in our funding. By saying that there is no increase in the foundation formula, it is approximately what schools received last year, or perhaps even a little less. It is anticipated that really that districts may receive as much as a 4% reduction in what they saw this last year in their foundation formula. Also, parents as teachers was reduced by $14 million. Transportation was reduced by $15 million. And there is no money in the next budget for career ladder. So schools, while we can say that we weren't hurt as much as everyone else, we didn't get any increases, and districts are going to have to make some hard decisions in the future about how best to serve the students that we have and how best to have education for these students.
And Mike, but despite those cuts that we suffered in education, and there were certainly other very serious cuts elsewhere in the state budget, it still didn't balance, did it? And the governor's going to have to make some additional cuts.
No, it did not balance. There were certain bills that were assumed to have were going to be passed in order to make sure that the budget balanced, and those did not pass. And so the governor is going to have to cut as much as $350 million from the budget. In reviewing that and discussing quietly with the governor's staff, they hope not to make any cuts to the foundation formula payments. That does not mean that other sources of funding for education will not be subject to those $350 million cuts. That is a tremendous amount of money to find in the budget. And so it's going to be very lean for the next year.
Mm-hmm. As we're recording this program, though, Mike, we don't really know where those cuts are going to be made.
We do not know where those cuts are going to be made, and the governor says that he will not make that announcement until the first part of June.
Mm-hmm. All right. Another major piece of legislation that did pass this year was, Mike, was House Bill 1543, notable for what was in it and then also what was not in it.
Well, it is notable for what was in it and what was not in it. 1543 was sponsored by Representative Maynard Wallace. We're going to miss Representative Wallace. He has been a very good friend of education. He is retiring because of term limits, and this was his bill to push. The original bill had language that MSBA had given to Representative Wallace several years ago, dealing with allowing teachers and administrative personnel, as long as they followed district policy, to have immunity on certain items. That was passed. Also included in that bill is cyberbullying and the ability to let districts have some flexible, some leeway with some of their spending. The 1% PD money, professional development money, does not have to go in as long as there is no increase in the foundation formula. Several other things are in that, and it allows districts to move money between funds and a little more ability to have flexibility as far as that's concerned. What was not in that, it was in the House version and the Senate version, but they could not reach a compromise, was what to do with the foundation formula and how, when times are such that the foundation formula is not fully funded, how districts would receive their money. And that did not end up in the bill. So it'll be left to Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to determine if the full foundation formula is not funded, as it is this year, how those reductions will be given to the districts.
Mm-hmm. And DESE's position to this point, Mike, has been across the board cuts.
DESE's position is to this point has been across the board. Everyone will take the same percentage reduction, both harmless and hold harmless and non-hold harmless districts.
What about summer school funding, Mike? That's something districts were worried about for several months, and some have already made decisions on whether or not to go forward with programs this summer. Where do we stand on that?
Summer school, there were several provisions in that bill in 1543 dealing with summer school. None of those provisions made it into the final bill. So summer school is exactly the way that it has always been. So that being said, again, if there is a reduction in the amount of money that is given in the formula for the districts, they may have to come up from other sources. But districts are not banned from having summer school, nor are districts just being paid for core subjects or any of that sort of situation. So if I say summer school is just the way that it was, that's true, except the whole funding formula, the amount of money given to districts will be reduced. So districts need to look at all avenues.
Another issue, Mike, that received a lot of attention, and this was part of the overall plan to reduce costs in state government, was the proposed merger of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education with the Department of Higher Education. That did not pass. Why not?
That did not pass, and it passed the Senate with, I think, 2 dissenting votes, maybe 1 dissenting vote. But when it came up to the House, there became some opposition. And I have to say that one of the chief people who were looking at it was our Board of Directors. The MSBA Board of Directors passed a resolution that stated, in essence, they were against the merger of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and the Department of Higher Education until such time as there was more looking into how the department will be organized. Also the fact that the bill that passed the Senate had only 6 members of the Board of Education, and the Commissioner of Education would be hired by that board, but subject to confirmation by the Senate. Pushing in a lot of politics into a situation, the MSBA Board of Directors said, whoa, slow down, let's look at this whole situation. A number of representatives came to me and said, hey, we appreciate that. It gives us, in essence, the cover that we need to come back and say, this is going too fast without enough organization and enough ideas on how this is going to happen. I think it'll come back next year. I think there will be some studies over the interim to determine how this will be structured, but it didn't pass.
An issue we thought was going to get a lot of attention, Mike, and we were very concerned about was open enrollment, but it really never materialized, did it?
It did not materialize. It was one of the first bills introduced by a senator, and it had a hearing, but there were not enough votes in that committee to get it out. Part of that is also because of several of our members contacted a number of senators, and including the Senate sponsor, and had a long discussion with him about how open enrollment would affect their districts, and how that while it sounds like an idea, that especially in the country, that Johnny and Mary shouldn't have to ride the school bus for an hour and a half when the other school is closer, there are a lot of items that have to be looked at just as far as that small snapshot. So it did go down to defeat. It was put on they tried to put it on 1543 in the House, and it was resoundingly defeated in the House. That being said, we're going to see it next year, and we're going to have to work very hard, again, to make sure that districts who don't have much money are not losing that money to someplace else.
Mike Reed, thanks for being with us, and thanks for all your good work and lobbying on behalf of public education down in Jefferson City.
It's fun because, in the end, we work for the kids, and we work for a very good group of elected officials, and it's enjoyable.
Thanks very much.